Here's a question that sounds almost too simple. Where do Romanians actually come from? Go ahead, take a guess. Most people shrug and say, Romans, probably. It's right there in the name. But here's the thing. Historians have been arguing about this for over 200 years. 2 centuries of debate, political fights, and academic wars, all over one question. And only now, thanks to DNA science, are we finally starting to get real answers. What those answers reveal, nobody saw it coming. So buckle up, because we're about to take a journey through genetics, ancient warriors, Roman emperors, and one of the most politically charged identity debates in all of European history. By the end of this, you'll see Romanians, and maybe European history itself, in a completely different light. Let's set the stage first, because geography is everything when it comes to genetics. Romania sits at a crossroads, literally. It's surrounded by Slavic-speaking nations, bordered by Hungary to the west, and kissed by the Black Sea to the east. It's the second most populated country in Eastern Europe, home to about 19 million people. And it's made up of 3 historic regions: Wallachia in the south, Moldavia in the northeast, and Transylvania in the center and northwest. Each region has its own unique history of conquest, migration, and settlement. And as we'll see, each carries slightly different genetic fingerprints. Now here's the first big clue in this mystery, and it's hiding in plain sight. Romanians speak Romanian, a Romance language. That means it's related to French, Italian, Spanish, and Portuguese. Think about that for a second. You're in the middle of Eastern Europe, surrounded by Slavic and Hungarian languages, and suddenly, there's this Latin-rooted tongue just sitting there, like finding a palm tree in the middle of Siberia. That is deeply unusual, and it screams that something remarkable happened in this part of the world a very long time ago. That something was the Roman Empire. In 106 AD, Emperor Trajan marched his legions into a territory called Dacia, roughly modern-day Romania, and conquered it. If you've ever seen Trajan's column in Rome, that towering spiral of carved stone showing Roman soldiers clashing with fierce mountain warriors, that's exactly the war we're talking about. The people Trajan defeated were the Dacians, fierce, proud, and militarily formidable. They weren't pushovers, but Rome won. And what happened next changed this corner of the world forever. Rome didn't just conquer Dacia. It colonized it. Hard. Romans flooded in. Soldiers, merchants, administrators, settlers. They built roads, cities, temples, aqueducts. Latin became the language of commerce and government. Over generations, the local Dacian population absorbed Roman culture, Roman customs, and crucially, Roman speech. Latin took root in their mouths, and in their children's mouths, and in their grandchildren's mouths. Then, around 271 AD, Rome pulled out. The empire was overstretched, under pressure on multiple fronts, and Dacia was just too far to hold. So the legions marched south and left. But here's what they couldn't take with them: the people. The Latin-speaking population stayed behind. And over the next 1,500 years, that spoken Latin slowly, gradually, word by word, evolved into what we today call Romanian. Now, that's the language story. But language and blood are 2 very different things. A population can adopt a language without sharing a single drop of the conqueror's blood. History is full of examples. So the real question is this: did the Romans leave behind their genes as well as their words? Or did the Dacians essentially survive as the dominant population, keeping their bloodlines mostly intact while just swapping out their language? That distinction matters enormously, and it's what scientists, historians, and politicians have been fighting over for generations. Let's talk about the historical argument, because you can't appreciate the DNA bombshell without understanding the debate it landed in. The official story, the one taught in Romanian schools for about 200 years, goes something like this. The Dacians were a sophisticated, warrior people. Rome conquered them. Over time, Romans and Dacians mixed, biologically and culturally. New Latin-speaking, mixed heritage people emerged. Those people are the ancestors of modern Romanians, and they've been living in the Carpathian region continuously ever since. This is called the Daco-Roman continuity theory. It's the national narrative, woven into Romanian identity at a deep level. But not everyone accepts it. There's a rival theory, the immigrationist theory, championed mainly by Hungarian historians and some Western academics. Their argument goes like this: When Rome left Dacia in 271 AD, the Latin-speaking population didn't stay. They moved south, across the Danube, into what is now Bulgaria and Serbia. For nearly 1,000 years, the region of modern Romania was settled primarily by Slavs, Hungarians, and other groups. Then, during the medieval period, Vlach populations, Latin-descended people from the south, migrated back north. Under this version of events, Romanians didn't originate in Transylvania. They arrived there later as migrants. You can probably already feel why this is explosive. Transylvania spent roughly 900 years as part of the Kingdom of Hungary, from around 1000 AD until 1918, when it became part of Romania after World War I. Today, over 1 million ethnic Hungarians still live in Transylvania. So when Romanian historians say, "We were here first, since Roman times," and Hungarian historians fire back, actually, you arrived in the medieval period. This isn't just academic point scoring. It's a battle over legitimacy, land, and identity. Whoever was there first has the stronger moral claim, and both sides know it. This is why Dacian imagery is everywhere in Romanian culture. Statues of Dacian warriors line public squares. Wolf symbolism, drawn from the Dacian battle standard, appears across Romanian popular culture. There's even a movement called Dacianism that argues the Dacians, not the Romans, should be considered the true primary ancestors of the Romanian people. On the flip side, other Romanians lean hard into the Roman connection, proudly describing their homeland as a Latin island in a Slavic sea, a living monument to Rome's civilizing reach. Both camps are emotionally invested. Both have done serious historical work to make their case. And for most of the past 2 centuries, neither side could land a knockout blow because the evidence, linguistic records, medieval chronicles, place names, church documents, could be read in multiple ways depending on who was doing the reading. Enter DNA science, and everything changes. Over the last decade or so, ancient DNA research has completely rewritten our understanding of European prehistory. Scientists can now extract genetic material from 1,000-year-old bones and read it like a book. They can compare ancient genomes to modern populations and map out migrations, mixtures, and population replacements across centuries. No chronicle can be faked. No border dispute can spin a genome. The bones don't lie. So what does the science actually say about Romanians? Let's start with modern Romanian genetics. Studies conducted by leading research institutions have found something interesting. Modern Romanians genetically resemble other Southeast European populations more than they resemble ancient Romans or modern Italians. When scientists break down Romanian ancestry into its major components, they find 3 big threads. First, Western hunter-gatherer ancestry, the oldest layer, stretching back to Europe's earliest human inhabitants. Second, early European farmer ancestry, brought by agricultural populations who spread from Anatolia, modern Turkey, into Europe roughly 8 to 10,000 years ago. And third, steppe ancestry, associated with the Yamnaya people and later Bronze Age groups who migrated out of the Pontic steppe, the vast grasslands north of the Black Sea, around 5,000 years ago. That third component, steppe ancestry, is something Romanians share heavily with their Slavic and Balkan neighbors. And that fact alone complicated the tidy Roman narrative quite a bit, as we'll discuss in a moment. There is a Roman-era genetic signal in modern Romanians. Researchers have found genetic affinity between modern Romanians and ancient individuals from the Roman period. So the Roman colonization did leave a biological mark. But, and this is crucial, that mark is modest. Romanians don't look genetically like ancient Romans or like modern Italians. The Roman contribution is one layer in a much more complex genetic cake. Now here's where it gets really exciting. What about the Dacians themselves? What does ancient DNA tell us about the people who were actually living in Dacia before Trajan showed up? Recent ancient DNA research has suggested, conducted by an international team of researchers from Romania, Germany, and the United States, analyzed ancient DNA from dozens of individuals buried in the region of modern Romania, dating from the Iron Age through the migration period. This is some of the most direct genetic evidence we've ever had for this question. Here's what they found. Iron Age individuals from the region, almost certainly Dacians or their close predecessors, showed strong genetic continuity with earlier Bronze Age populations of the same area. These weren't newcomers. They'd been there for a long time. When Roman period samples were examined, something changed. New genetic signals appeared, ancestry patterns consistent with Roman-era immigration. The population had mixed. New people had arrived and left their genetic mark, but the pre-Roman population hadn't been replaced. It had been blended. This is genuinely significant. The most extreme version of the immigrationist theory, the idea that the original population completely disappeared after Rome left, doesn't hold up to genetic scrutiny. The Dacians didn't vanish. Their descendants were still there, genetically traceable through centuries of Roman occupation and beyond. At the same time, the most triumphalist version of the continuity theory, the idea that Romanians are primarily Roman in blood, also takes a hit. The Roman genetic contribution is real but limited. Romanians are not Romans wearing Dacian clothes. They are something genuinely new, a blend of indigenous, Roman, and later Slavic and other medieval influences. Now, here's where it gets politically messy again, because DNA findings don't automatically end identity debates. Not even close. When early genetic studies revealed that Romanians carry significant Slavic ancestry, which they absolutely do, reflecting early medieval Slavic migrations across Eastern Europe, the reaction from some quarters in Romania was not calm. The idea that Romanians might be partly Slavic felt like a direct attack on the Latin, Roman identity that generations of Romanians had been raised to cherish. People don't just look at a chart and update their worldview. Identity is emotional. It's personal. It's tied to grandparents' stories and national holidays and the songs you learn as a child. On the other side, Hungarian academics have sometimes cherry-picked genetic research to argue that Romanian presence in Transylvania is a medieval phenomenon, not an ancient one, using science as ammunition in a centuries-old territorial argument. And geneticists themselves have pushed back on this pretty firmly. Researchers specializing in ancient DNA have been clear on this point. Population genetics tells us about the movement of people through time. It does not tell us who has the legitimate political claim to any piece of land. Ancestry is not nationality. Genes are not citizenship. Using DNA to adjudicate border disputes is a misuse of the science, full stop. But let's be honest, knowing that the science is being misused doesn't make the underlying debate any less fascinating. Because within Romania itself, there's a genuine cultural conversation happening about which ancestral identity feels more true, more meaningful, more worth preserving. Some Romanians feel that the Roman connection gives them something precious, a link to one of the greatest civilizations in human history, a sense of cultural prestige that sets them apart in their region. Others feel that Dacian identity is more authentic, more rooted, more indigenous. They feel that Rome gets all the glory while the people who were already there, the mountain warriors, the wolf banner soldiers, the original inhabitants of the Carpathians, get treated as a footnote. And honestly, neither feeling is wrong. Both are reaching for something real. Because here's the truth that the DNA reveals. Romanians are the product of all of it. The long-settled Bronze Age people who became the Dacians. The Roman legionnaires and colonists who followed Trajan's eagles east. The early medieval Slavic communities who spread across Eastern Europe and left their genes alongside their place names. Smaller contributions from Goths, Huns, Avars, Cumans, and a dozen other groups who marched through or settled in the Carpathian-Danubian space over 15 centuries. All of it is in there. The Daco-Roman continuity theory gets partial but real support from the DNA. The indigenous population persisted. They didn't disappear. Roman ancestry mixed into them, but didn't overwhelm them. And the language, that stubborn, beautiful, Latin-rooted Romanian tongue, survived not because Romans replaced the Dacians, but because the Dacians absorbed Roman speech and made it their own, passing it forward through generation after generation of farmers, shepherds, and medieval villagers who probably had no idea they were carrying one of history's great linguistic miracles in their mouths every time they spoke. The Roman Empire didn't just leave ruins behind in Dacia. It left an echo in a language that lived on through people who looked genetically much more like their ancient, barbarian ancestors than like the marble statue emperors who once ruled them. That's not a contradiction. That's how history actually works. So where does all of this leave us? Romanians are a mixed people. But then again, so is every European nation. Every population on this continent is a layered cake of migrations, conquests, absorptions, and replacements stretching back tens of thousands of years. What makes Romania's story special is how dramatically that mixing played out, how linguistically improbable it was for a Latin language to survive in the middle of Eastern Europe, and how intensely those ancient questions still burn in the present day. The science has given us a clearer picture than we've ever had before, but it hasn't closed the book. Ancient DNA research is ongoing. New burial sites are being excavated. New genomes are being sequenced. With every passing year, the resolution gets sharper. Gaps in the record get filled. And the story of the Romanian people, their Dacian roots, their Roman overlay, their Slavic layer, and everything else besides, gets a little more complete. This is history as it should be told, not as a settled argument that one side wins, but as a living, breathing, constantly evolving conversation between the bones of the past and the questions of the present. If this kind of deep historical storytelling fires you up, ancient peoples, DNA mysteries, the politics of identity, hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed. There's so much more where this came from, and you genuinely do not want to miss what's coming next.